Using the HIMI Gouache palette, I'm going to show you how I went from painting this on day 1 and somehow ended up all the way on this on day 31, or realistically like day 45. He looks like he's been crying because like the water's welling up right here by his eyes. Now I'm gonna make his pupils brown again. Yes, this is Beck from Victorious, aka Avan Jogia, aka TikTok Bae. And I'm gonna start out with how I painted his face first, but if you're a beginner and wanna go over the entire process from my very amateur cloud to my very amateur face, then go to this timestamp. In the past few months, the YouTube algorithm told me that I'd love to watch painting videos of Studio Ghibli landscapes and gorgeous portraits. So here I am, taking advantage of the summer and learning to paint with gouache. I have had a little bit of experience painting before. I used to paint a little bit with acrylic, but mostly with oil for a few months, but I never had such formal training to learn things about color mixing, about shadows, and generally art theory is what I'll call it, because I don't know how else to describe like the music equivalent of art theory. So I decided to ask my friend Ashley to help me to learn how to paint gouache, and she has her own YouTube channel. Definitely check her out because she has helped me a lot in this process. So I'm going to explain everything I did to learn how to become comfortable with the medium of gouache within a month. And I'm not saying I'm a professional, I'm not saying that I have mastered gouache by any means. I'm just saying that I have mastered it to the ability that I would like to right now. I could continue improving if I want to. When I was looking for a picture to paint, I wanted one with a face with some shadows and mostly looking straight forward. The first thing I did to start this process was put this photograph behind my watercolor paper and tape it against a window to let the light through. I initially thought that tracing was a big no-no in art, and maybe it still is, but I don't see anything wrong with it for the practice of this exercise. I had to fill in some details after the initial tracing, and I wanted to print the image out so that I could reference the size of specific features to compare to my drawing and make it as similar as possible after I was done tracing. And here is my drawing of him so far. I knew I needed a lot of white for his skin tone because of another painting I did that had a similar color palette sort of. And I learned how to mix the colors when my teacher Ashley showed me the Zorn palette, which was a great starting point to learn how to mix skin tones. And then I eventually strayed from that starting point to work with other colors I had too. It's okay if the drawing isn't perfect, and I want to spend as much time on it as I can, but I'm not going to make the drawing absolutely perfect because it's going to get covered by paint anyway. I want to get the features and the placement right mostly, but for example, the hair, I'm not going to go in with too much detail. I'll go in with as much as I want to because again, this is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be torture. I think what I was surprised with in this painting, which I'm still working on, is just how much white I had to use for her skin tone. I think his skin tone isn't too far off, and I'm gonna keep using the Zorn palette idea, but I will be adding some of this orange from the HIMI palette. So I originally, for the Zorn palette, I used ochre and the kind of true red color in the HIMI palette, but adding some of the orange in was good. Did I learn gouache because of him? No. I learned it and then I was looking for another reference image that I wanted to paint, and I was like, okay, I think painting him could be fun, and this was a cool reference image. Definitely have seen him on TikTok. Definitely, this is because of that and my resurgence in rewatching Victorious and iCarly and old shows on Disney Plus and Paramount. But yeah, I'm still working on this, and soon I'll be filling in the paint for this. It's July 20th. I think with the Avan Jogia portrait, it's been a little difficult to kind of like get the right colors. And so I don't keep on losing faith in myself, I'm going to continue working on the first portrait I started with. I just think like sometimes when it's hard to do something, go back to doing something easier so you can kind of like get more optimistic again. And I do want to work on both pieces this week anyway, as my painting lessons are coming to an end. I have to finish this. So, I mean, like, I want to finish this before. And the reason I'm taping it to my table is because I have fans on while I'm painting, so the paper just isn't gonna fly away. I was spraying my HIMI palette with my spray bottle, but the fan was directly in front of it. So I stupidly was like kind of lazy again. And I was like, it'll be fine. So I sprayed the bottle, except I was spraying black, and then black went on my painting. But it's really small dots. It's not very noticeable. I could stop painting now if I want to, but I want to keep going because I think once I like figure out how to blend this part, I'll be pretty close to done. And there's room for improvement in the mouth as well to make it like deeper. I think the nose is like really great right now, but still could use more blending on this side. I might leave it though, because if you look at it from far away, it's pretty good. I believe the neck is too yellow, so I'm gonna try and make it more black. And then I have to go back in with the hair, add more like single strands of hair to make it more 3D, less flat. And then also maybe fill in the background a bit more. Somehow I spilled water right here. It's okay. I'm gonna continue mixing it and working on this. I might start to work on my, what do you call it? Painting stand, what's that called? Whatever it's called, my easel. Just so I can keep looking at the painting from far away, because I keep having that problem of not stepping back for a little while, but I need to remember to keep doing that. I think I'll make a sign that says step back and look at it, or maybe I'll set like a 15-minute timer so every 15 minutes I'm reminded to like kind of step back and look at it that way. So I painted some more of Avan Jogia last night. This is the first layer of more opaque colors that I've added. Before, this was all just a watercolory look. I'm having a bit of a hard time getting the right colors for his face because it's more like of a golden tone. I haven't painted that before. It is like a little bit of that yellow ochre with white, but also some more orange from my HIMI palette. And yeah, definitely, I actually like the unblended style of the forehead here, but I also like need to work on the colors on this side and then, you know, go back in and add more details, but you'll see more of that soon. I think this is like heading in the right direction. I honestly want to be a bit done with this one. I think I just need to take a step back for a few minutes or like a little while because it was getting very frustrating. The colors are really, really beautiful in this. Like, if you look from here, it looks cool, but I think close up you can tell that I'm struggling with blending the colors and then figuring out the right colors too. It's not bad. It's cool for like a first attempt, but there are definitely ways I can go back in and improve. And the sweater, like, I am not a fan of drawing this sweater, of painting the sweater. It has just been very exhausting and I don't like the background. But the important part, I do like her face. I think that is turning out well, but it definitely could still be improved. Today is the last day I'll be working on the Avan Jogia portrait, hopefully. I have to finish it up because tomorrow's my last painting lesson and I want to have it done before that. I'm gonna go in with the shadows, add more purple, try to blend it out more, make it smoother, like the first portrait I made.
Please fall. Please fall. Yeah. See, had to ask a question if you happy, girl.
So something that Ashley pointed out to me was that in the original image there was a lot more purple, in the shadows especially, which is why I'm going to add it. I noticed in a different gouache painting that I saw from a watercolor magazine, the way they outlined the images, I'll put the reference right here, it's like a soft white thin series of soft white thin lines. So I'm thinking of doing that maybe with a green to contrast the red sweatshirt. I could do like a green thin outline on top of this gray background that I'll fill in. Right here in the background, I mixed white and black and like a tinge of green, which is really hard to see, but it makes me happy to know that I put green in it to contrast this. So let's paint this background now. Stuck in the cold, cause there's nothing left to hold, yeah. Cause I done please fall. I done please fall. To get this color, I've been straying, well, this, I don't think this is the color I'll actually end up with in that part of his face right here. I've been straying a bit from the Zorn palette because I think that's like a starting point and I need to kind of expand a little bit from there. And what I've been mixing are the following. I start off with the white base as usual for most of his portrait. This is from order of most paint to least paint. So white, yellow ochre, orange. Okay, this orange back here. Some bright yellow. And then occasionally I'll add this light brown. Usually the other brown makes his skin tone more gray, where then I need to add more yellow ochre. But I think if there isn't grayness, then I don't want to use this dark brown because it just, I feel like it makes the painting so not warm. And then when I need to, I'll add some of this red because it is closer to purple in the words of Ashley. And this purple, maybe I'll add it. I've only tried that like a couple times so far. It does work pretty well, but I'm more comfortable with adding like the red and the blue than straight up adding the purple. I don't know, I think it just has a better effect and I can control the darkness a little more if I add this cerulean blue and then this dark red. But in this palette, this dark red is a bit close to pink if you water it down too much. So I have to make sure the consistency is still pretty thick, especially because I don't like that glazed look or I'm not going for that anyway in this portrait. I have never looked so deeply into someone's eyes as I have with this computer right now. He looks like he's been crying because like the water's welling up right here by his eyes, but I'm gonna make him happy again because I need to look at those eyes and go back to what do you call it? I have to go back to shaping these because right now he's sad. I realized his eye shape wasn't exactly correct when I compared it to my accurate size paintings, so that's why I had to go back and make the whites bigger. Now I'm gonna make his pupils brown again. I'm supposed to be done with the Avan Jogia portrait before my lesson today, but I don't think I will be. I'm gonna keep working on it after. It looks like it's getting further and further away from him, but I promise it is not. It's actually getting closer. It's just that I need to like go back in around the hairline and like make that full of more hair, not forehead. And his eye shape is kind of like, I'm having a hard time making his brow look furrowed. I think he looks like a little more, he looks more serious in this image than in my painting. So I'm trying to get that look without forcing the look. I don't want it to look forced. So let me try to do that. When I first approached Ashley to teach me how to paint, I never thought I'd be able to paint a face. Not in a 1 month lesson plan, at least. As you will see in the rest of the video, I was painting landscapes and still life. Yet it still felt like one day I woke up and all of a sudden I became good at painting faces. Once I added the finishing touches and decided I was happy with this piece, I was still confused on my own process from going from still life to this. The best way to explain that is I literally just did it. I think with little steps I grew in each piece, and now for anyone who wants to learn how to paint and get more specific advice than just go do what you want to do, I'm going to explain what I did in my lessons with Ashley. So here's the materials I used to start painting. A HIMI Gouache palette, one size 2 round brush, one size 10 flat brush, I believe this is also a size 10 round brush, one watercolor pad of 30 sheets, a rag for soaking up water and extra paint, a resealable jar, a spray bottle, and here's the total cost of the supplies, which is honestly not the cheapest, but it's also not too bad for starting a new hobby, nor does it take up too much real estate like my other hobbies of crocheting and sewing tend to do. Gouache can be built up to thicker, almost like acrylic, but it dries matte, and then it can also be watered down to be used similar to a watercolor style. So for the first lesson, I painted a color wheel. I know that sounds really simple, but it definitely got me more comfortable with using the paintbrushes and also understanding how the colors look on paper, not just in the palette, and about mixing the colors together. So here's my color wheel, and if I was ever confused about what colors to mix together or how to create a more contrasting look, a more complementary look, I could always refer to this if I don't have it memorized off the top of my head. And also just visually to see it on the paper really helps me interpret the colors, figure out what colors to use. I start with pencil typically. I don't just go in with the paint to begin with. So basically anytime I start a piece now, I water down the gouache, create the watercolor layer base first to see how colors look next to each other, and then from there I can start building layers. I like to ask myself the following questions when I have the watercolor layer down. Do these colors have enough contrast? Do I need to mix more of the contrasting color to make the shadow more dramatic? Do I need to blend the colors more? Does the color palette go together? It feels silly to explain how I drew something so simple like grass, but overall, doing the simple things has really helped me develop an understanding of the medium and being confident in how I can use the medium. Then I painted some grass. To start this piece of grass that ends up being more dark green in the front is start with a yellow background. As you keep building up the layers, having that yellow background in the back to begin with and ending with the darker colors make the darker colors look closer to you and the yellow look further away and also more glowy in general. So we also did a cloud. I mean, I keep thinking this is a cloud, but it's actually a bush. So it's in the shape of a cloud, but it is a bush because I was trying to sort of emulate those Studio Ghibli landscape things, and that would include a cloud. I mean, that would include a bush, some grass, some mountains. And you can see I'm not so great at blending the colors here, but I am figuring out my style at this point. And I don't have a style of my own yet or anything. I'm just saying what I'm actually comfortable with. So between each lesson, I would practice on my own using reference images that I found that I thought I could work with that related to the lesson, or that I just wanted to, or images that Ashley provided me beforehand. It was good to practice on my own and not just rely only on someone else to teach me, because that helped me figure out any problems I had, with how to achieve a certain mixing color, or where does a shadow go here. It just helps you a lot more if you think about it yourself. In addition to if you have someone helping you, it is helpful to think on your own always. It's the active recall thing, but for a different, never mind. One of the next things we did was practice using still life. So we started off with this. It is a cube, and I think when I think of an art class, that's what I imagine that people are painting still life, and that sounds boring, but I thought it was fun pretty much to keep mixing colors and understanding where do shadows go depending on where the sun would be. And I made these oranges as a practice, and this study helped me a lot with the fruit still life because I got to understand how to mix the colors and also figure out where to place highlights. And I did this one on my own, so again, it was me thinking on my own and not just relying on my teacher. And then I did this other apple here on the bottom, which is a more blocky style, and at first I didn't really like how it turned out, and because I didn't like what I was doing, I was kind of rushing, and I really need to take my time when I do these things. Yeah, so I painted it, I didn't like it, but one of the other things I learned is that if you step away from it, how does it look then if it's further away from you? So when I stepped away from it, I was like, oh, this is actually really cool, and I'm not aiming for like a realist style here, I'm just aiming for something that looks cool. And I really like images that are super blocky, and you can see those strokes from a flat brush, for example. So that is like partly what I was emulating here, and partly by accident kind of happened, but I realized I really like that style. And yeah, here is some more still life. What I mostly learned in this one was doing the petal shapes. That was really hard for me, and I kind of failed on the bottom part here, but it honestly wasn't fun anymore because I was getting very frustrated with it. And for me, this isn't just about mastering a craft, it's also about having fun. And if I wasn't having fun anymore, I didn't feel the need to go back and perfect this. Of course, I would become a better painter if I did, but I thought I could do better painting in other ways too. Oh, and then every time I do like a critique of the piece, I will write down any notes I have, or on a post-it, I'll write down the notes so that I can go back and fix this if I want to. In one of the next lessons, we practiced more still life, and I made this apple that I was so shocked by because I think it looks very cool. It was very successful, which is surprising to me. Being good at this apple, or doing a good job making this apple, made me more confident in my skills, and a lot of the painting actually was about confidence for me. I was very hesitant, I was making small strokes, but if you just go for it, if you just start painting, you'll eventually get better. In some of the lessons, I was so afraid to even touch the paint to the paper because I was so afraid of messing up, but it's not about messing up, it's just about trying. Even if you do mess up, that's fine, you're still trying something new. And there's a really low risk, and that's like a theme for me in a lot of things I try that are new. Does it have a low risk? Because then I'll try it. What's the harm then? There's barely any risk. One lesson that was a big turning point for me was drawing the field of flowers. So I didn't believe that when I started this whole process, I wanted to do the field of flowers. I thought that would be my end goal. I didn't think I was going to be painting faces. So doing that in one of the earlier lessons, like almost, right away after learning to mix a few colors and painting grass and very small things, was really exciting and fun, and also not as hard as I thought. It's also not a person, it's items, it's a field, so there's a lot of room for messing up, and the medium of gouache allows you to layer a lot, and you can blend away problems, or you could just keep layering for the most part. Obviously there's a limit at some point, but I feel like I barely reached that limit. When I approached Ashley about learning to paint, I told her that I wanted to paint windows with flowers, and also fields of flowers and fields of grass, or anything that I was like, I had seen other painters do that were inspired by Studio Ghibli. And eventually I came across some watercolor magazines, and I found some more photos for inspiration. So I love these buildings and how the flowers are around, and after seeing these images and after watching Disney's Luca, I was really inspired by the look of the buildings in the movie and in these watercolor magazine images, so I ended up making my own version of that. And this piece still isn't done, but this was my final piece for the first half of our lessons, where I learned a lot about still life and flowers and also shadow. This was my piece from my own mind, from lots of inspiration from other places. This is not completely original or anything. This is just art inspired by other art. So I still have to go back and add a few things, like deepening the shadows, deepening the border between the buildings to make the building, to make you understand where the perspective of the building is. It's behind. And filling in the white space here. But overall, I think this was a successful painting. I'm really glad I did it. It was very fun to do, and sometimes it can make you a little crazy because you're just trying to get everything perfect. But again, step away from it and step back. Like, is it good from here? From further away? Is it good from here? Yes, has some flaws, but if it's good from here, then I'm happy with it. So So yeah, these are some more examples of other things I made of still life, and yeah, and then this is one of the last still lifes I made. It is based on images that were in front of me, not a reference photo, which is different because the shadows keep moving, the colors are not as consistent as they are in an image, the perspectives change, but still, these are still life pieces of objects. And I made up the background and the table. And eventually I got to paint a face. And this face is not done yet. As of yesterday, it was the first time I painted an entire face, with a face especially, but also in these other portraits and paintings that I'm doing. It's important to work around the painting. Don't just focus in one area, because it might look like you finished one section, but then the other sections might be totally mismatched. So I find it hard to sort of work around the painting, but it's really important to remember and can improve your piece overall. So I know I have this problem with other things too, like video editing, writing, but for some reason not in sewing as much. I think it's sort of harder to have that problem in sewing, to only focus on one spot. But with this, it's really, really important to work around the piece. So do the pencil first, figure out the shadows, then set down the watercolor layer, then figure out what shadows go where, and you know, you get to where you are. So with this piece, we learned about the Jogia palette. So that palette has been helpful to understand how to mix skin tones, because I wouldn't have thought to use yellow ochre and mix red with it. I think I would have just used the normal yellow, which I really do not like on the gouache palette. On the HIMI palette, it's not great. So I'm gonna try using the yellow ochre more now, because the yellow, it's a little translucent, it's a little hard to work with, and it's just hard to get to show up on the paper, I feel like. But overall, for the price, the HIMI palette is really great. I love it. When we started faces, that was crazy for me. I was very, very scared again, but low risk, what's the harm? What we did was started off by drawing individual features. We drew eyes, we drew noses and lips, and I was taking so long in the drawing part that it was hard to get to the painting, and we did paint in black and white first. What Ashley did for the next lesson was actually draw an outline of a face for me, an outline of the same face for her, so I could see her working at the same time. That was the first time she ever drew something for me that I painted in, but I think that was a good exercise to just understand how to paint a face, and I'm still painting that face right now, figuring out the shadows and what colors to mix, and the Jogia palette is helping me with that. And I think I might finish making the Jogia palette if I have some time. So I'll see you when I'm working on that. I've been working on this painting for about an hour and a half. So I've been layering a lot, and I feel like it's very difficult to layer because I feel like I'm covering up the work I already did, but I know it's part of the process. But sometimes I don't know if it's getting better or worse until I'm like at least 20 or 30 minutes in. I think this side is like looking better. It needs to be a lot darker, but this side I keep like going back and forth between making it look worse and better. Today was the last day of my painting lessons. We went over the different paintings and critiqued them and what I could work on if I wanted to continue to improve them. And some of them I want to continue improving, like the Avan Jogia portrait, the color portrait, and the luca one as well. The side of the luca one needs to be kind of lightened up to make sure that it looks further away rather than too close up, especially because the house of the side that it's on is visually further away. Ashley suggested that I paint something in real life. So what I think I'm gonna do is head over to Central Park and pick up a spot and paint something. Seems fun. And I could time myself so that I don't get too carried away with perfecting it unless I want to continue after the 90 minutes or so. Because sometimes it takes me like an hour just to draw, but maybe if it's a landscape and if it is on a smaller scale, then I won't be so focused on that. And I'm thinking maybe for my gallery wall in my room, I don't like the current centerpiece, so I could paint something that size to replace it with.